How's it? Have you ever had somebody say something about your photographs that made you view them in a way that you'd never considered before? So in my own case, I was on an episode of The Crit House with Jeff Larson and a couple of other guests, and a lady said that she looked at my photographs and thought that they were reminiscent of an alien or somebody who'd come down and was photographing little segments of the world to try and make sense of it. And I thought, what a great idea to kind of sort of share with you about how I actually go about this process, because it's very easy when you're confronted with a grand scene or an interesting object, whatever, to try and photograph the whole thing. And that doesn't always come right.
So here we are at Duxford Imperial War Museum, which I love. It's airplanes. If you're a fan of airplanes, then you are in for a rare treat. And as much as I do love airplanes, I'm not here to take photographs of the planes. Now, instead, what I'm looking to find is shape, form, possibly a bit of texture. And the reason I'm looking for this is because I think it would be kind of somewhat foolish from my own point of view to try and photograph the planes as they are, because they're quite clearly not in their natural environment. So I'm up here on the balcony and I've seen this fiery swordfish. So what I'm kind of seeing there is the prop, the cowling, the colours, the black and the white, and I'm going to try and isolate all that stuff into a position. Woof! That's a bit rude, right? To see what kind of photograph I actually make. It wasn't quite what I was looking for, but it's a start. I think it might actually be better from down below. But it just goes to show that if you think something, hey, it might be interesting, might be cool, take a photograph of it. Take a photograph of it. See what happens. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. No big deal. And I'm trying desperately today to not just kind of go to my default settings of taking photographs, which is to look at the ceiling and all that kind of stuff and hone in on those shapes up there, but rather to concentrate on the airplanes themselves. Okay, so behind me there's this mosquito, which I really love. Look at the yellow and the black. I think this is a training aircraft because there's a TA, and the roundels and stuff on it. And I've been trying to isolate the props, the little nose cone, observation hatch, what have you, and I'm finding it a bit tricky because the background is all getting very busy. So I'm discovering that I'm having to really get a lot closer than I possibly would want to with all this kind of stuff. But in a way, it's sort of forcing me to do something again outside of my comfort zone. Now, I mentioned it's getting me closer than I want to. For some reason, I'm just not feeling it. I think the photographs are okay, but it's weird because it's something that's quite far away from me. I'm having to reach out and pull it closer to me, and I don't actually really feel comfortable with doing that, which is a very odd thing to say. Now, here's an interesting thing. I was just talking about distance and pulling things in or what have you, and these Red Cross roundel doodads above me, I've taken a picture of them, which I really like. And it's odd. I feel a lot better about it, even though it's the same idea. I'm cropping in close because I'm standing literally on top of them. Maybe that's got something to do with it. Maybe I need to feel somewhat close to the subject that I'm photographing to feel connected with it. So I'm standing in front of the Concorde, an iconic aeroplane, iconic shape, and yet I'm not trying to photograph the Concorde. I'm not trying to photograph any of these planes. I'm trying to pick out elements within them that I think look pretty cool. And I'm starting to get a bit of a hang of it, at least I hope so, from the photographs, that it's about trying to find clean shapes, clean patterns, clean form. There's not too much form going on at the moment here because the lighting is quite flat, especially on a big wing like that. It is, by its very nature, a flat surface. So the form is a bit tricky because form is made up from shadows. But what we're going to have is a lot of this later on, this flatness, and I'm going to see if I can actually use that to my advantage. So I've had a little kind of cool moment here. So I'm underneath the wing of the Vulcan, and over there is a fast airplane, and it's being framed. You can see even just in the frame here. If I just move this camera this other way, look at that framing. See how kind of cool that is. This whole little episode in here has been about trying to make compromises in the photographs to end up with an image that I like, which is also kind of cool because I've been trying to not necessarily show off, but making a concerted effort to do one thing because I'm filming this for you, and I'm seeing things and approaches that I never would have done, specifically very central compositions, which is normally my go-to thing. I've had to change them up a bit to make the subject hide and mask distracting elements behind it. I quite like this. It's been really good.
So at this point, walking around Duxford, and I'm getting some ideas, and I'm finding some, so I hope, interesting photographs. And if this sort of walking around, trying to find interesting pictures, appeals to you, and you also want to get some in-person feedback with your photographs, the results that you get, then in 2025 I have 2 events that are coming up. So one is in Boston, and the other one is in Vienna. So they are weekends where we're going to get together, we're going to walk around Boston and Vienna and find images, look at what we're getting, seeing how we can refine that, how we can build on these ideas. It's not a photo walk where you just kind of wander around, you watch somebody take some pictures and then you sort of copy. This is about laying a foundation for your photography, to uncovering how you can go through the process of discovering pictures yourself with some immediate feedback from myself and from a whole bunch of other people. So if you are interested in joining me either in Boston or Vienna, then there's some links in the description box below, and I hope to see you there. But anyway, let's get back to Duxford and see what's happening there. That was really cool being in there. We've now retreated outside to the sanctuary of the play park because I was photographing under some very trying conditions, which were, you could hear the kids playing in the background. I'd forgotten to charge the batteries in my camera because, of course, I did. That's like the first time in 20 years that's happened. Shame on me. So I had to photograph with my phone. So I mean, the lenses that I was going to use to try and isolate those shapes and forms didn't happen, which meant that I had to change the idea that I had in my head regarding compositions and make adjustments to the way that I was photographing. When I look at the planes in there, they are works of art. People design them, they have a purpose to them, they look beautiful. I'm a fan of planes, as you may have guessed. But I don't want to photograph the planes. I want to photograph the little bits that people don't see when they look at those planes. You know, the Vulcan bomber. It's huge wingspan. When the engines take off, they make this insane roar. And that's what people are always trying to get there. But there's a quietness to these things. You touch, well, you don't touch them, but if you're close to the photograph, if you're close to the subject, then I think you feel in touch with the people who built these things. Somebody engineered those curves. Somebody designed the sweep of the wing. I'm thinking about the Mosquito right at the beginning, where I said it felt weird because I was kind of quite far away from it and I want to be closer to something. I think that's something that's important to me, is to be close, to feel a connection with the things that I'm photographing. So right now, my lad and his friend are playing in the play park over there, and they're quite far away. And if I were to photograph them from here, they're just playing around, having fun, because it's a nice moment in their lives. it wouldn't feel the same. It feels distant. It feels disconnected. I want to be part of that picture. I'm going to touch on this point in a minute because we're going to do some architectural photography at an airfield, because as you do, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this idea of connecting with the photograph, connecting with the subject. Never take 2 children to a museum. I've just been sitting, we have been having lunch, and as we've been at the lunch, I've been looking at that F-15 over there, and the way that the light is all coming from behind. So this is the American Air Wing section of Duxford, and I love the light because this is all natural light, whereas opposed to the previous place, which is kind of like ambient-y, made up to look natural but not natural light. So lots of spotlights on the roof, that kind of thing. And as I've been looking at the F-15, I want to think the way that backlight is really giving it some shape and some texture. It's highlighting, especially around some of the vents and on the bottom of the nose cone with the rim lighting. It looks absolutely stunning. And I know that it's not going to look the same from the other side, obviously, because of the jets facing this way, they can't turn around. But I want to illustrate how different things can appear depending on how you photograph them using the light that you have. So, we're at the front of the building, or the back, depends on how you think about it. And there's a big giant window which is flooding this whole place full of natural light, which is lovely. Look at the light on my face, wonderful. But my face now is also very flat, as is the back of that F-15. So all of a sudden it loses any sort of depth to it. It becomes just a very flat, very busy looking object. Right? And you can sort of see this echoed around with most of the things that I'm sort of looking at here. As soon as I put the light though to one side, then you can sort of see it on my face, you can see it on this B-52 behind me, that all of these planes, when the light's hitting them flat on, become just, I won't say boring, that's probably the wrong word, but they lose any sort of depth, any sort of shape or form to them. So that's why I want you to be thinking about, like, where's the light on the subject, and how does it change how that subject looks? Okay, so the real reason that I came in is because I'm a frustrated architectural photographer, frustrated architect rather, and I love the work of Ezra Stoller. And when I'm in here, especially, I get a feeling that I'm a little bit more in touch with the vibe that the architect, whoever designed this building, was going for. So there's lots of sweeping lines. It was all reminiscent of obviously, motion, air, movement, speed, that sort of thing. And I'm also a huge fan of concrete. I love concrete. It's an awesome thing. And when you couple all this together, also with this natural light that's coming through here, then it's a great way of me being able to find shape and form, which is kind of the theme of today. This is shape and this form, because the light's doing a lot of lifting in here. It's a wonderful environment. I love the very hard angled geometry of the whole building, plus all the sweeping curves in the concrete. But because this is natural light in here, it's giving a richness, it's giving a bit of a depth to the images that I absolutely adore. Once again, we've got this grey day of sort of light, and to be frank, a not very inspiring landscape or environment. But because I've been out here on a mission, as it were, to find shape and form, you know, things of that nature, I've had a lot more success today than I think I would have if I'd been trying to photograph the aeroplanes. Not least because, as I mentioned at the beginning, they're not in their natural environment. It would be foolish. You know, the F-15 that I've been looking at, there's a great photograph of an F-15 by Dan Winters, which is wonderful. And it's of the aeroplane, and it's in an environment that is like a sterile thing, so you're just focusing simply on that. Whereas here, it'd be foolish to try and replicate that because I just can't. So I have to look at what's available, and that's the light. And the light in here is wonderful. I've always liked this building, not least because of its architecture, which I'm going to enjoy some more of on the way out, but also because you've got very directional but yet soft light. It's wonderful light, just kind of wraps around. So if you want texture, if you want to get, you know, the feel of the rivets and things like that, then you can. But also if I want to get silhouettes, if I want to break things down into iconic shapes, then I can do that as well, just by being aware of where the light is and what it's doing. And we've all got light to work with. This is not something that is specific to one place. We all have the sun. We should make more use of it. So we have those two distinct places. There's the Air and Space Museum, which is the one with the kind of mucky light, and the Vulcan and the Concorde and that stuff, and then there's the American space. And if I look back at the photographs, I feel that some are successful. I think some really just, they don't land quite as much as I would like to do. And I feel, certainly in the Air and Space sections, that's the beginning section, that the problem there, for me, it's the light. A lot of those planes are very light colored objects. So the fact that that light is kind of really very flat, it's very wraparound, which is, of course, is lovely if that's the sort of thing that you want, doesn't really help when I'm trying to find some form, because form comes with the addition of shadow. And without that shadow, everything just feels flat. And then you couple that with the white things and stuff, and it becomes a bit mucky. Also, the ceiling, and it sounds like I'm making lots of excuses about why these pictures aren't particularly, I don't think they're particularly great. As I said, there's a couple I really like. But if I am to go back again, number one, I would make sure that my cameras are charged, because duh, right? Number two, I feel like a 50mm lens or something would really help isolate the sections of the planes that I find interesting. As I said, it's not the great shape of the plane itself, it's the little curves, the air intakes, you know, the bits of landing gear, the rivets, all that kind of, all that little minutiae, the little bits and the bobs that really appeal to me. That's what I like, you know, right back at the beginning, you're thinking about that, what people are talking about, like, you know, how, oh, my pictures look like they are, you know, an alien's come down and like trying to find bits and bobs, trying to make sense of the whole by looking at smaller parts. In the American Air Wing, I think it's a little bit more successful, probably because there's a far stronger sense of directional light in there, plus the ceiling is a somewhat blank canvas against which to shoot these things. And so it makes life a little bit easier. But the other thing with that is that the stuff is a lot more cramped. There are planes literally stacked underneath each. I mean, the whole thing is full of a B-52, and then there's always other bits and bobs inside. So it's a really good exercise in looking at what you have, being aware of the background. In some of the images, there's little bits and bobs in the background that I don't particularly care for. But I also don't want to be one of these photographers who starts down the road of cloning every little thing out that doesn't appeal to the photograph or doesn't contribute, because where does that end? How much is it okay, and then when do we start going a little bit too far? Anyway, I'm going to leave you with that question: how much is too much in post-processing? Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video. You know, if you want to check more about Ezra Stoller, who I mentioned up above, check on this video here. Have a wonderful new year if I don't speak to you before then. And yeah, thanks for watching, and cheerio.